This video contains flashing lights, unsettling content and violent content. Viewer discretion advised.
I've chosen a new subject. Guess who?
The mark of a great game is its challenge, risk versus reward. Where better to showcase that than fighting the various bosses throughout the game's levels and worlds.
However, there are some where the scaling is off the charts, where victory is kept barely out of reach and collateral damage to your gaming setup is unavoidable.
Some of them leave you feeling satisfied after the long slog, while the rest leave you behind as an empty husk, barely alive after finally winning the battle. These are the top 60 hardest bosses in games. Emperor Palpatine, Super Star Wars, Return of the Jedi. The Dark Lord of the Sith is far from the frail old man he appears to be. Aboard the second Death Star, Jedi Luke Skywalker must do battle with this tyrant after defeating his own father, but the battle has clearly only just begun. Palpatine is quite mobile, flying around the stage and wildly shooting bolts of lightning from his fingertips, his cape trailing behind him in epic fashion. These attacks will deal decent damage to Luke, who can at least block with his lightsaber, but can only strike the Emperor in small windows of opportunity. The Emperor's lightning attacks can actually destroy the floor too, making jumping from platform to platform rather difficult. However, it is the best way to quickly catch up to Palpatine and give him a taste of unlimited power.
Men at Legs, Pikmin 2. The first thing that everyone seems to notice about the Man at Legs is how creepy it is. Essentially a spider that has been mechanized into a creepy, still semi-organic cyborg. The Man at Legs relies on its speed to obliterate Olimar and the Pikmin, along with a series of weapons. Found in the subterranean complex on a terrifying trek through the Hole of Heroes, and in challenge mode. It is not a common enemy, but facing it proves to be a task. Using the organic spider essentially as a host, the mechanized weapons will seek and destroy any target that happens to be brave enough to attack it, with attacks that include a machine gun that emerges from its underbelly and locks on with laser sights. It is quite a formidable foe. It is at its most vulnerable when it lowers itself to the ground, and using the Pikmin as a well-timed distraction is the easiest way to be able to defeat it. There are numerous strategies floated in guides. Even with the best assistance, it can still easily obliterate you in a matter of seconds if you give it the chance. One advantage you do have is the fact that the Pikmin will not be stomped by the Man at Legs, as its feet are far too small. When it is finally defeated, it'll fall to the ground and explode, showering the battlefield with various treasures. You have to feel sorry for the little arachnid itself though, trapped in an unwilling battle against a dangerous mech it has no control over, when all it wanted was to live a peaceful life.
Yellow Devil, Mega Man. Dr. Wily's first robot created for ground combat, the Yellow Devil is made from shape memory alloy. This allows it to split into many small pieces and reassemble without fear of breakage, while simultaneously damaging anyone in the path of its individual pieces. Mega Man must dodge these often, and keep an eye out for its laser eye, which coincidentally happens to be the robot's only weakness whilst using Elect Man's Thunder Beam. A simple yet difficult boss that is still to this day is the bane of many retro gamers' existence. Recognizing the pattern is one step, but victory will only come to the most skilled of players.
Weldar, Banjo Tooie. Weldar, the visually impaired welding torch, known to nearly everyone as simply Weldar, is a boss who is often thought of as one of the most difficult enemies to defeat in the game series alongside Hag 1 and Mr. Patch. His difficulty level is not so much due to his attacks, but more so due to the skill needed, as well as the sheer length of the boss battle. He is found in the basement of the repair depot after completing a number of difficult tasks. Although the path to him is long, the boss battle is something that is even more complex. Despite the fact he's half blind, Weldar begrudgingly gets Banjo and Kazooie to fight him as they had woken him up. When the battle begins, he'll throw blue fireballs at the partners and will try and inhale the duo for extra damage. You'll need to keep your distance, however, and launch grenade eggs into his open mouth. Given enough trouble, he'll toss 3 enemies known as Washup, Boltoid, and Nutter into the arena to dispose of the bear and bird. Once they have been defeated, Weldar will grow desperate and chase the player around the battlefield. even jumping high up into the air for a stomp attack. Eventually growing tired of the hits he keeps taking, he'll flick an emergency switch that electrifies the floor. Banjo and Kazooie must deftly avoid this shocking addition, whilst also avoiding the attacks emanating from Weldar. Rinse and repeat this formula, and eventually he'll explode, his head flying off and destroying a circuit box. However, this is not the end for Weldar. His disembodied head is still sentient, and you'll be able to have a nice little chat once he's calmed down. While the duo won't be awarded a jiggy, they will be allowed to escape the room, though Weldar hints where a piece is located. But he is obviously in no fit condition to lead you there.
Barrett, Deus Ex Human Revolution. There's a reason they call him the Bull, and that's because his boss battle is complete bullshit. One of the 3 tyrants who nearly killed Adam Jensen in their attack on Seraph Industries Research Lab, Barrett's augmentations are heavy and extensive. Aside from being visibly much stronger than the average human, upgrades aside, his most notable feature is the minigun stored inside his left arm, which he wields with great accuracy. Much of the battle will feature him mercilessly raining bullets down on your location as he marches ever forward, throwing grenades when he feels his quarry has been hiding too long behind cover. Most weaponry is ineffective against his reinforced body, with Barrett's head being the only obvious weak spot. EMP grenades keep him immobile briefly, but don't get too close once his system reboots unless you want a face full of fist. Aside from being a monster to fight, he's also just such a jerk of a human being. What's left of him. So how about it, Boy Scout? Can you take the relentless beast like a real soldier? Or are you just gonna throw grenades and snipe from behind cover? We endorse the latter.
Jack and Silvana, from The Illusion of Gaia. In the deepest bowels of the sanctuary of Mu, 2 ancient evils lie in wait for a hero to attempt to take their cursed lives from them. They are known as Jack and Silvana, vampires who provide one of the greatest obstacles in the entirety of the illusion of Gaia. The first impediment thrust on the player for this battle is the time limit of only 140 seconds, giving you very little time to defeat the 2 of them. Held captive with a time bomb, losing brings with it the threat of death in an ancient tomb. Jack and Silvana will use a series of orb attacks that travel down each of the corridors in the level, which can allow for some nasty hits. They are also blessed with the capacity to throw out circular orb damage and even electrified versions of the attack that strafe across the screen. With their super fast movement, they can also dodge considerably well. Guerrilla sword attacks are one of the most viable ways to defeat these 2, and it is best to focus on one and then the other in order to kill them in time. When you finally kill them, Will must also rush to cut the correct wire to defuse the bomb for there to be a happy ending. Without the timer, this battle would be a lot less punishing. But what's life if not for living dangerously?
Red Grimgrin, the Guardian Legend. Aside from being quite the eyesore, the Red Grimgrin is the biggest pain in the neck. Encountered in Corridor 8, this smiling menace hovers along the path shooting lasers at the protagonist as she tries to save Earth from the invading alien horde. Red Grimgrin has a primary eye, 2 very small seeing eyes, and 4 eye arrays that shoot out, you guessed it, eyes at the player. Both the lasers and eyes make getting a clean shot on this boss without taking damage almost impossible. Even grabbing health and shields can be extremely dangerous. If you've managed to collect enough power-ups, you'll be able to whittle away his health and gouge out the eye arrays, leaving only lasers to avoid as you attack the primary one. Careful to take the opportunity to hit him when you can, because if you blink, you'll miss it. Once it pops up, however, you'll realize it was a big mistake, as dozens of eyes burst out, swarming the screen, making finishing off this boss all the more difficult. Keep moving and use those power-ups wisely, and you may see yourself out of this mess.
Ender Dragon from Minecraft. Minecraft is the kind of game where you can spend days upon days of playtime and never reach the end of it, where there are seemingly endless possibilities. When the Ender Dragon was introduced quite a few updates into the game, it became suddenly apparent that there was indeed a way to defeat a final boss in Minecraft. To get to the end, one must use Ender Pearls, and this can be a long and arduous journey depending on where the level is located in the spawned world. If you can manage to get into the End Fortress and then make your way through the End, as well as navigate your way around the Endermen, you will be able to face up against the Ender Dragon. Unless kitted out in full diamond armor, with a good bow and a diamond sword, and preferably some enchantments, it is unlikely that you will be able to defeat the boss. The dragon will circle above the player, allowing shots from the bow to be loosed on it, and then it will begin to strafe, blowing out fireballs as it goes. The dragon may also dive down onto the player in an attempt to cause as much damage as possible. Finally, it can also blow out purple clouds of smoke that can be captured. However, this can be a risky endeavor if you get hit on the way to capture it. The dragon will be able to cause immense damage with its attacks, which can lead to crushing disappointment if you happen to die and end up back at your spawn bed. When defeated, the death of the Ender Dragon will allow you to respawn it, if you really want to take that risk again, of course.
Will die.
Mr. Freeze, from Batman Arkham City, New Game Plus. Victor Freeze's cold and calculating methods to further his criminal activities stem from the unshakable dedication to his wife Nora. He will do anything to save her life, even if it means hurting innocents or killing the Batman. During the Arkham City incident, Freeze battles the world's greatest detective for a possible cure to his wife's deadly disease, and as Batman, it is up to you to find out how to take him down. This is no easy task, as Freeze's suit and equipment is not only advanced, but capable of deploying countermeasures to prevent you from using the same approach twice. Scanners monitor your footsteps, so he's always on the tails of your cape, and these keep Freeze alerted for when you approach. When he loses track of you, he activates drones that search for and drop ice bombs onto Batman when detected. Being nimbler than the battle-armored tragic villain, you are able to use the environment to your advantage for quick takedowns, use weak walls and glass, or activate traps like magnets or the electric pool. But once used, Freeze will see to it that his mistakes can never be repeated, making this boss battle not only adaptive to your strategy, but keeping you cautious as to your approach. Freeze won't stop until he has your cold, dead body in his clutches.
I will turn your blood to ice.
Surprised you made it this far.
Alex Mercer, Prototype 2. Priorly the head of the Blacklight project at Gentech, Alex Mercer is a force of nature, even after being obliterated into near-nothingness in the first Prototype game. He returns in the second as a formidable enemy with an ace up his sleeve, or rather his arsenal of powers as he captures Maya. Heller must go head-to-head with him in order to get her back and save what little is left of his world.
Well, now you've just pissed me off.
But this is no easy feat. The battle has multiple levels, with Alex taking on 3 forms. If you attempt to use the same mutation as he is using, then he will use an extremely dangerous counterattack to knock you into next week. He uses blade strikes in an attempt to gain the higher ground, utilizes a spike attack that travels through the ground, hurls helicopters at you, and will send flaming carry-ons after you. As his body courses with the red-hot power of the Blacklight infection, it will take every ounce of Heller's strength to take him out.
Extremely disappointing, Heller.
Should you manage to defeat him, there is no true relief in the end cutscene.
Welcome to the top of the food chain.
Heller will consume him, but if the first Prototype game is anything to go by, Mercer is living and reliving, proof that some things are completely unkillable. Mysterious Warrior, Double Dragon 2, The Revenge. When you have a name like Raymond in a high-stakes fighting game where everyone and everything can be used as a deadly weapon, you're going to have to consider Deedpool. That's why dear old Raymond has taken the moniker of the Mysterious Warrior, or as he's sometimes referred to by the protagonist, Shadow Warrior. The Mysterious Warrior has been given the capability to use every single ability that his underlings have, as well as a special training in the art known as Phantom Murder Fist. The mysterious warrior only appears on the Supreme Master difficulty of the Nintendo Entertainment System version of the game, showing everyone just how much people hated him on the Famicom version. He has 2 phases in his boss battle, and in the first, he has the ability to turn invisible at will, the bane of any gamer's playthrough. He is also gifted with strong attacks that will obliterate you if you're not careful, so this battle takes a lot of time, effort, and precision. Should you make it through the first phase by dealing him immense damage, you will be presented by the second battlefield, a temple. If you can thrash him in this end stage, avoiding his kicks, jumps, spins, and pilfered moves from other enemies, Mirian will be relieved and the evil defeated.
Propellor Knight from Shovel Knight. Captain of the self-proclaimed flying machine, the flamboyant Propeller Knight uses his hella helmet to quickly fly about the stage, making him difficult to hit and at some points unpredictable. This debonair fencer dashes back and forth, slashing the Shovel Knight with every pass. Jumping can be a good tactic and help you score some damage, but at times he may wait for you to land before striking once more, so don't bite off more than you can chew. He'll use a combination of the helicopter and sword to stab whilst flying or impale you with a downward strike. Should the battle become too hairy, Propeller Knight will signal to his gunship to launch bombs at his opponent, then huge cannonballs that break the stage. It's possible to whack the bombs into Propeller Knight to bring him down to Earth faster, but his incredible agility makes this boss a night to remember.
Soldaten, Return to Castle Wolfenstein. The latest and greatest advancement in Nazi biomechanics fresh from the mind of Death's Head himself, der Soldaten, or Super Soldier, is one of the most imposing instruments of war ever devised. It is a walking battalion armed to the teeth with a Tesla gun, Panzerfaust launcher, and Venom gun. Each weapon covers short, medium, and long-distance combat, making the Super Soldier superior in any form of combat. Its armor is far more durable than any previously seen experiments, giving it double the strength of proto-soldiers. Its only shortcoming is in how slowly it moves, making it the single advantage Blazkowicz has to defeat them. If that wasn't bad enough, the evil scientist will also keep shooting at you on the balcony above. You do have the ability to snipe them from a distance with the paratroop rifle or Panzerfaust, but standing still is usually a death wish. Keep in cover because the Super Soldier can easily hit you, even from far away. Use your environment well and do your best to move as fast as you can to slay the monster.
Kessler from Infamous. The man who brought Empire City to its knees and awakened the superpowers of every conduit within, Kessler is also the reason why Cole's girlfriend is dead. To avenge her and his home, Cole McGrath faces him at Ground Zero to end this chaos once and for all. However, Kessler's electrokinesis powers are not only like Cole's, but far more advanced. He has the ability to teleport from place to place, or swiftly advance on Cole's position to deal a devastating burst attack. He can throw explosives from a distance and use shockwaves or lightning hooks to send Cole flying. Only ever vulnerable during short recharge periods, Kessler can call upon drones to keep him covered, and use doppelgangers to keep Cole distracted while he charges up more white lightning attacks. Every attack is overwhelmingly powerful, and more often than not, you'll find yourself lying on your back, having been tossed across the arena. Kessler knows your moves. He uses all your own tactics, but is so much better at wielding his powers. Given these similarities, it's possible he may be more similar than you realize.
Witness my limitless power.
Seth, Street Fighter IV. Resembling a cross between the Silver Surfer and Dr. Manhattan, Seth makes for a formidable foe with his imposing physique and smooth silver skin, along with his enormous muscles. Much like the pattern in many fighting games, he has the capacity to be able to mimic the moves of every other fighter in the game. He is the final boss of story mode, but in mimicking other fighters, he will take their abilities and manipulate them in order to become more powerful than the individual that he is fighting. For instance, should he use the most famous move from the game, Seth will not only release the Shoryuken, but also have the ability to obliterate the player with 3 more hits afterwards. That's not to say that Seth's moves only revolve around stolen abilities. He also has a series of tandem attacks that can make for some devastating moves. His super combo consists of a massive ball of energy released from his body that pushes away his opponent. His ultra combos allow for a typhoon that deals huge damage, as well as a move that allows him to bring the player close to him, then throw them afterwards, also dealing massive damage. As with most fighter titles, the higher the difficulty, the more it feels like banging your head against the wall over and over again.
Within my body lies the whole of the universe. I am eternal. Let's not forget to enjoy this. You're going down.
Senator Stephen Armstrong, Metal Gear Rising, Revengeance. You don't want to mess with this senator, as he's armed with more than just a dream of America's future. Infused with copious amounts of nanomachines, Senator Armstrong easily faces down Raiden atop the wreckage of Metal Gear Exilus and breaks his sword. These small robots allow Armstrong to cloak himself in an incredibly durable alloy that prevents almost any damage taken by him. They also increase his speed and strength, which he utilizes by combining football tackles with Western and sumo wrestling styles. On top of this, he is able to unleash fire attacks, whether they be an explosive wave or bursting from beneath the ground. Quick-time events will occur if he catches or knocks Raiden to the ground, so make sure you're quick to respond and you'll get a few good hits in. It makes sense this battle as difficult as it is. What do you expect when the moral of the human race takes on the fiery rage of the American people at the failure of their establishment? Both very relatable, but only one is willing to kill many innocent lives to see that dream to make America great again come true.
Water Beast from Turok, 2008. Bursting from the depths, this eel-headed beast might be mistaken for something simple and easy, especially only being the second boss of the game. You'd be wrong. Turok will have his hands full dodging the massive tentacles as they whip along the shoreline and jab at him from afar, then have to duck out of the way of the beast's head as it lunges forward to take a bite. The only way to damage the thing is to light up the geothermic gas vent sitting conveniently between you and the water, but that means having to run between each one as you use them. At first, it seems that you're just making the water beast angrier as it opts to throw giant boulders and rip stalactites from the ceiling just to hurl them at you. It only takes a couple good hits from this monster to kill you, so keep your wits and maybe you won't end up as fish food.
Goregasm!
Al Gore, South Park, The Stick of Truth. When he's not losing elections against George Bush or fighting the growing threat of global warming, Al Gore can be found in The Stick of Truth just chilling out and spamming your Facebook. That is, until you decide to ruin his day by unfriending him. He'll then believe you are the man-bear pig before launching an attack. Before you can even attempt to start something with him, it's advisable to stock up as much as you can on restoration items that boost speed, attack, and health. When you begin the fight with Al, you'll be faced by a presentation on global warming that is so riveting that it'll make you fall asleep instantly. To make matters even worse, he will bring in his Secret Service buddies who you'll also have to fight. It's advised that you ensure your buddy knows precisely how to give you as much restoration as they can through the battle, and one of the most important things to do is to get the timing right, especially in relation to blocking attacks. His level is affected by yours, and he'll level up accordingly. To make matters so much worse, he is immune to stun and sleep attacks, and his Secret Service agents will be particularly nasty. 2 of them are armed with rifles that can take out half of your health if you don't block. The other has a stun grenade that, if not blocked correctly, can easily warrant a defeat from the serviceman or Al himself. In order to defeat him, it becomes a matter of being as fast and playing as smart as you can. Or you can rely on the sheer blind luck, like Bush did. Shame you don't have election fraud attack.
Oh!
I am really
I can't die! I was almost barely president!
Ultimate Evil, Splatterhouse 2. A floating mass comprised of melting rotten human and canine heads, the ultimate evil is as ugly as it is difficult. The arena is only a dirt path, but this creature makes the most out of its flying abilities as it hurls heads from its body at Rick, all the while you're punching skulls. The ultimate evil hangs on the boundaries of the screen, just out of reach. Finally, once it's taken a good beating, the meatball will explode in a shower of entrails, revealing a bloody bat face with wings that darts haphazardly through the air. The randomness of its attacks may drain your hearts, but keep track of its patterns, and you'll live long enough to see this monstrosity bite the dust.
Kim, General of the North Korean Army.
General Kim, True Crime, Streets of LA. In order to restore peace and justice in Los Angeles, you gotta break a few eggs to make the omelet, or a few bones as this case may be. While True Crime Streets of LA is often referred to as one in a long line of Grand Theft Auto clones, it has a certain element that differ wildly, and this particularly incredible hard boss battle is one of those major differences, bearing at least one passing resemblance to a certain figure of note. General Kim has one and only one thing in mind, and that is winning every arms race he possibly can. In order to fight him, you'll need to achieve one of two endings, but he is particularly of note in the good ending, where he will reveal his master plan. Kang must be able to take him down, but this can take a great deal of skill. It is recommended that you train in the dojos as much as possible in order to defeat him, but it'll pay off in the end. The boss battle takes place in the Ring of Fire, and you must fight the general in order to get full closure about what happened to your father. General Kim has a propensity towards using as many counterattacks as he possibly can, and this may result in a number of frustrating console shutdowns and thrown controllers. A particularly aggravating annoyance is the inability to block by holding backwards in the direction you are holding, but this doesn't always work, and instead Kang walks into the fire because of the poorly optimized control scheme. Another frustrating feature is that Kang can be damaged by walking into the flames, whereas Kim walks through them taking no damage. Should you lose, Kim will escape, but if you manage to win, Kang will finally be at peace with the loss of his father, and the evil will be truly defeated.
Lavos, Chrono Trigger, an ancient alien being who was trapped on Earth since nearly the dawn of time. Lavos has been draining the planet throughout the centuries in order to feed its children, and to gain enough power to move on to its next host world to suck dry. In the game, there are two battles featuring Lavos, and neither is a simple one. In the Ocean Palace level, which is the first time the player encounters it, there will be a battle that you will simply be unable to withstand, with the boss absolutely obliterating the party in a matter of seconds. Lavos is also the final boss of the game, and can be found in the year 1999, appearing with an enormous number of different forms to try and outlast the player. The capacity of the parasite to mimic other enemies is quite the daunting thing to witness. Once you manage to break it down while fighting it, it will finally show its true form and start using the attacks it has on its own. Its first attack is Rain Destruction, and it will also use particularly harmful needling attacks to try and decimate your health. Once this phase is over, its shell will open and you will be allowed to access within. As with many of the bosses on this list, the amount of phases to this boss battle makes for quite the exhausting endeavor. Inside the shell, you must completely destroy both its arms, and it will use status effects in order to try to completely obliterate your party. It will use the Dark Will obstacle attacks over and over, until it is finally decimated enough to reveal its true form. Presented with 3 pods, the player must attack these as much as they can, specifically the center pod, which controls the core defense stat. It will use attacks specific to the time periods that it has existed through, and often they will do enormous amounts of damage to the characters. Once this section of the battle is defeated, you will finally reach the end. While this is a game that takes place through the course of history, nobody quite expected that the final boss would take centuries to defeat, but this battle easily makes it feel that way.
Azazel, Tekken 6. Blessed with the majesty of an ancient Egyptian god, not to mention the strength of one too. The rectifier of all things, Azazel is not a force to be trifled with. Awakened after the clashing between Jin and Kazuya, the two evil stars that left the earth swimming in negative energy, this great monster wastes no time in fighting all who stood in his path. His body, crystalline in appearance, glows with darkness underneath, which he uses to pull large boulders and columns from the ground. His laser eyes deal large amounts of damage. Apart from typical slashing attacks with his giant claws and being able to grab his opponents to smash them into the ground, Azazel can also use a spinning attack and incapacitate fighters with his swiftness and overwhelming power. His golden form, which can be fought once the player has acquired 10 million points in arcade mode, is 1.5 times stronger and twice as resistant to damage as his predecessor. One slip up against this creature and victory will never be yours again.
Feel the wrath of Shao Kahn!
Shao Kahn from Mortal Kombat 2011. Returning as the final boss to take up the mantle that he left behind in Mortal Kombat 3, Shao Kahn cuts one of the most badass figures to be seen in the history of the entire game series. With the capacity to use both magical attacks as well as super strength, and fairly rapid movements, he will often eviscerate the player in a matter of seconds the first time you fight him. One of his signature moves is the Light Spear, which is a massive beam of light that he will throw at the character, and his Wrath Hammer is equally well known, an enormous hammer used to stun his enemies.
You will never win!
All of his attacks deal heaps of damage to the player, and often he will manage to wheedle in some cheap hits that allow him to get extra HP off his enemies. If you should happen to let up for even a couple of moves, it's more likely that he will simply destroy you. It's okay though. We all know that if you're a fighting game, you need to have at least one boss with cheap shots. Although you'll be drinking a few of those to pull you through this battle.
It's official! You suck!
Omega Genra, Dead or Alive 3. Once the adopted father of Ayane and her diligent tutor, Genra was the dedicated and honorable master ninja of the Hajimon arm of the Mugen Tenshin clan. However, there comes a time when every great man must fall. When he ascended to Doa Tech, performing extreme genetic manipulation on his body, he was transformed into a superhuman with terrifying powers. He is not merely transformed internally from his original outward appearance of an aging man. He then chooses an almost demon-like form, encased in a massive samurai suit, his glowing red eyes full of fury. Genra is the final boss in the game, and all playable characters must head off against him when the story concludes. Omega will unleash a series of attacks, including a massive shockwave, lightning bolts designed to strike the player's character repetitively, and jets of fire, and he takes very little damage when you fight back. He cannot be thrown, and the throw attack will only cause negligible harm. This, in tandem with his strong and hard to avoid distance attacks, make for quite the formidable foe. The battle itself is kind of disorienting, since it is fought behind your character, rather than side to side, making fighting more difficult. If you should manage to make it past the full frontal assault of Ayane, you'll be faced with the sad reality as she picks up his Tokusho blade. Not only has she won one of her hardest battles, she has also lost what little family she had. Queen Valkyrie, God of War. Having slain 8 Valkyries hidden throughout the realms and returned the helms to the Council thrones, Sigrun, the Valkyrie leader, will burst through the resulting realm tear to kill Kratos and Atreus. Corrupted by the same spell as her sisters, Sigrun is the strongest and most aggressive foe you will face, wearing strong armor and armed to the teeth. Her scythe is used for a powerful downward stroke from the sky, which can be parried if timed well. While her mace is not only stronger, but can be used for multiple strikes, making dodging necessary as well. Sigrun may also summon throwing discs that can home in on the player. Despite carrying these weapons, her most utilized assets are the razor-sharp wings on her back. Not only do they provide her air superiority, but they can be used to block attacks, create a whirlwind, unleash a flurry of darts, allow her to swoop and dive bomb Kratos, and slash and thrust with devastating blows to health. All of this is nothing without command of the arcane, able to rain a torrent of fire from the sky, creating stunning shockwaves and hurl shards of ice. Watch for Sigrun's brief telegraphs if you want to survive. Use Boy's abilities to your advantage, and be thankful that this is only an optional boss. Gruntilda, Banjo-Kazooie. After kidnapping Tootie, the sister of Banjo, as she is the fairest in the land, Gruntilda begins to lay out her master plan that culminates in the final battle. Extremely vain and rather fond of digging about her nostrils for a tasty snack, Gruntilda fits the bill of the stereotypical nasty old witch. The final battle with her is an absolute doozy. She can be an incredibly difficult boss to defeat, largely due to the sheer length of the phases in the battle. She will crash bomb Banjo and Kazooie on her broom using its teeth. However, at random intervals, the broom will stall. The player will need to do their utmost in order to get hits on her. When tired of this, she will begin to throw fireballs, and her AI is intelligent enough to throw fireballs into estimated direction the player is about to go next. She will stop for a short period, and this will give the player ample opportunity to throw a couple of eggs in her direction. Throughout all of this, she will use homing spells that can only be reflected with a golden feather. Eventually, she'll fly into the air yet again, meaning Banjo and Kazooie will have to attempt to get hits on her as she hurls down fireballs. Soon after this, she'll create a rather unfair force field that shields her from all damage. The Jinjos intervene to aid the duo by creating statues that the player must hit with eggs. When her broom is destroyed, she eventually gets quicker with the spell casting, resulting in a larger statue known as the Mighty Jinjinator being revealed. The final statue must also have a series of eggs flung into it. Once you manage to get enough eggs into the statue, you can sit back and watch some sweet revenge by the power of the Mighty Jinjinator. Gruntilda will fall from her tower and then being crushed by a rock at the end. This battle is exceptionally long and grueling. If you fell at any point in the struggle, you'll have to start the boss battle again.
Clyde, Pac Man World 2. Widely considered the only boss in Pac Man World 2 that is worth mentioning, Clyde puts up quite a fight when you face him in the lava lakes of the Caldera. Mistakenly skinned as Blinky thanks to the long-standing Blinky Clyde era, Pac Man first faces him throwing fireballs that leave a trail of fire behind them. The next section of this battle follows a similar pattern to the previous bosses in the game. However, you will find that you are unable to rev roll in order to stop Clyde. This makes moving on to the next phase particularly difficult, as the only way to end this is to damage the enormous hovering craft that he's contained in by hitting the glass top. However, when Clyde hovers around above you, he will be able to spew fire from the bottom of the vehicle in order to damage you, making attacking it even more difficult. The battle continues for 3 more phases, moving from 2 fireballs at a time to 3, and finally to all of the attacks combined. In order to defeat him, Pac Man must get at least 2 successful butt bounce attacks on the glass of the ship, and Clyde will finally fall to the ground. What makes this whole battle extra difficult is the hitbox issues that Clyde seems to have, making it extremely hard to defeat him, as well as the vast array of attacks that he can unleash. Defeating him will give Pac Man the golden pair, as well as the ability to advance.
Zeus, God of War 2. Revenge comes at a heavy price, and the beating you'll take from the King of Olympus is more than enough payment to cover. It's already a pain juggling between dodging Zeus's thunderbolts and quaking atop the summit of sacrifice, but you've got to contend with the 3 sirens at the same time. Once you bring him down to your size with their dying shrieks, you'll soon realize that was the easy part. Facing Zeus one-on-one is tough, as his hand-to-hand capabilities are supplemented by his godly strength. His manipulation of electricity and dodging speed are a challenge to contend with, but when he snatches the blade of Olympus from your hands, his damage-dealing capabilities only grow. A juggling match with the sword, as well as a few pillars to the face, only angers Zeus, forcing him to bring out the big light show to try to finish the Ghost of Sparta off. Trust us, it's all worth it to see Zeus get his butt handed to him, even for a brief moment.
My twin fangs.
Hans Volter, Killing Floor 2. A 100-year-old mad scientist from World War II specializing in cloning and human augmentation, Hans Volter eventually opted to use his own body to further his research. Now a biomechanical marvel, he sports sharp claws, improved speed, and inbuilt shields for times of need. He's more than happy to attack any opposition head-on, even summoning Zeds to aid him in battle, but for the most part is quite capable on his own. Aside from melee combat, Hans also carries dual MKB-42 machine guns, which he cycles out for various grenade types. He utilizes explosive grenades to injure or ward off attackers, toxic grenades to poison and disorient enemies, and when his health is low, uses a combination of these with smoke grenades to hide his location while he finds a victim to drain the health out of. It takes a surprising amount of damage to cut this madman down. But who is to say, given his research, that this will be the last you'll see of Hans Volter? Death, Castlevania. In the original Nintendo Entertainment System, Death is one of those rare bosses that remains a constant threat, no matter what you do. He will fly around the room, using evasive tactics that will make him hard to hit. He will summon scythes from thin air and uses magic powers in order to spin them around at ever-increasing speeds. As they hurtle towards you, it will take all your skill to be able to dodge them. The 3 weapons that people advise using against him are the boomerang, the holy water, and the axe. But don't misunderstand that these won't make it a simple battle. The best way to manage this fight is to dodge as much as possible, and always keep as much distance as you can. A high level of strategy is required in the case of Death's boss battle, and there's no opportunity to let your guard down, and very little room for error. Many a great Castlevania player has fallen prey to Death's scythe, and even if you manage to topple him, they will stay in the air, lying in wait for you to get too close and have to face the whole accursed boss battle over again. You would think that the worst thing in any game is the final boss, but Castlevania likes to make extra sure that you're well prepared to face the next battle without tearing too much of your hair out, especially if you have none left after facing Death.
Queen Myra, Gears of War 3, Insane Difficulty. Queen of the Locust Horde, Myra is the reason so many humans have died in these bloody wars. With both sides building up to the complete annihilation of the other, she will stop at nothing to wipe out Delta Squad before they can use the Emulsion countermeasure weapon to wipe out all traces of Lembency. Riding her mount, a giant beetle called the Tempest, she uses its molten mouth to sear everything its light hits. The impact is so powerful, it bursts all it touches into flame. When facing too much resistance, it calls Shriekers and Savage Grapplers to aid in defending troops on the ground. Only the power of the Hammer of Dawn, an orbital laser satellite, can burn this annoying bug out of the sky for good. However, the charge does not last long, so you will need to find another Hammer of Dawn, against the onslaught of the respawning enemies and wrath of the Tempest.
Virgil, Devil May Cry 3, Dante Must Die mode. The twin sons of Sparta battle in the demon world, one to save humanity, the other to possess greater demon power. Virgil is a near-perfect counter to Dante, using his Darkslayer style to move in the blink of an eye, positioning himself in the perfect place to strike. Equipped with his Yamato, Beowulf, and Force-Edged Devil Arms, he is able to attack with impressive speed and power, as well as supplement them with deadly magic. At times, he is completely invincible to Dante's blows, meaning you'll have to dodge for your life as soon as possible. Virgil will strike continuously and fiercely up close, but can also summon ethereal swords that can be thrown from afar. The battle is epic in not only its hectic nature, but for the deep bond the pair share. But Dante must get the amulet back, even if that means killing his brother.
Rodin, Bayonetta. The first thing that every gamer learns about Bayonetta when they pick up her game is that she's the kind of woman who should not be messed with. She's got incredible combat skills, fantastic weapons, and when you get deeper into the game, a solid chunk of health, as well as impeccable dress sense. However, even the world's most badass witch has got to meet her match sometime. Well, almost. Surprisingly, this rival can be found in the form of your trusty weapons dealer and local shopkeep, Rodin, who has a secret form that can only be seen in his hidden boss battle. To begin the fight, you need to earn 10 million halos, as well as buy the platinum ticket for 999,999 of them. When fighting Rodin, Bayonetta will be left with no items, and if you haven't equipped yourself with the very best weapons the game has to offer, he will obliterate you in a matter of seconds. His attacks are particularly vicious, with one of them notorious for its questionable content that results in nakedness and cigar smoking. Most of Rodin's attacks will slice chunks from your health bar, often taking a quarter or half off with one hit. It is not recommended that anyone attempt this battle before they are well kitted out for it, or mentally prepared to face the demon who has aided your entire quest.
Brainiac, Injustice 2. Superior in every way, Brainiac is more than a match, even for the Man of Steel himself. Sapping information from every corner of the universe, this once small alien being has been transformed into the technological megalomaniac he is today. Able to physically link with technology and being part machine himself, Brainiac brought about the destruction of Krypton and also organized the downfall of Earth and every superhero in his path. He controls various heroes along the way, and when it comes to confront him directly, it's a tough fight to win. His mechanical tendrils aid his maneuverability and deal most of the damage, quickly swiping, grabbing, and slamming the player into submission. He can even throw missiles and summon a robotic arm to move the player back should they feel overwhelmed. His armor is tough and can generate an electric field to stun attackers, giving him a window to retaliate. Once his robot catches you in their grapple and his ship's lasers trains its sight on you, it's game over.
Brainiac wins. You cannot match my intellect.
Elysium from Soul Calibur 5. The absolutely ethereal Elysium is the final boss battle of Soul Calibur 5, and she makes for quite the sight in the last battle. The soul of the Soul Calibur sword, she is technically genderless, but appears as female. Able to mimic all the moves of the female characters in the game, she gains special abilities when she imitates the Pira Omega style, ending up with Sylphidia's Angel Step abilities instead of the weaker Nemesis Step. These attacks cause enormous damage and result in the near decimation of the player in a matter of seconds. She is also blessed with the Eleusin Initiation ability, which allows for her to grow her wings and ascend while the player is struck over and over with an unseeable force. It is possible to retaliate against this, but it requires long-range attacks and, to be blocked, the capability to guard oneself against it. As the battle progresses, Elysium will gain access to all the weaponry wielded by women in the game, and will use them to cause as much damage as possible to the protagonist. As you scale the difficulties, her battle becomes increasingly hard, eventually leading to trying to defeat her on the hardest level. If you fail the battle, which is a possibility that often rears its head, you will be presented with the option to redo it on the same or lower difficulty. It's just a matter of time and frustration until you finally crack and crank it down. Tabuu from Super Smash Bros. Brawl. This mysterious blue figure is the master of the subspace armies waging war on the world of trophies. Under normal circumstances, Tabuu would be invincible with his wings, but since Sonic disabled his ability to use them, the final battle can begin. Even then, Tabuu is more of a challenge, sporting a plethora of devastating attacks that more often than not will one-hit KO challengers into oblivion. His Shark Blade, Diving Slash, Dragon Laser, and Shuriken Boomerang can all be avoided by jumping high enough, and make sure to avoid being caught in the golden bracket. His Chain of Light can catch players and slam them into the ground, or in co-op mode, the other fighter. Keep an eye out for a line of flashing golden lights to avoid his pinpoint explosion attack, and try to get in close to deal what will seem like barely any damage at all. Take your time, and don't get too greedy, as Tabuu can summon an electrical shield that damages all within its radius, as well as create explosive ghost projections. He'll spend most of his time teleporting to random locations just to avoid you, but watch out once he does take the offensive, as his rapid chop and bullet chain can leave you very weak. Sometimes he will grow in mass and shoot lasers from his eyes, but his most deadly attack is his off waves. Briefly regrowing his wings, Tabuu will send out multiple waves from them that will insta-kill anyone caught in their path. It's the kind of challenge you expect from the final boss, especially in Smash.
King Boo from the Hidden Mansion's PAL Edition, Luigi's Mansion. Commander of the Boos, kidnapper of Mario, this boss has pulled out all the stops to defeat Luigi. Possessing the empty shell of Bowser's body, King Boo pilots his puppet around the narrow rooftop for the final confrontation, taking advantage of Bowser's ability to breathe fire, throw explosive mines, and suck up Luigi whole. With the Poltergust, Luigi can blast open the puppet, forcing King Boo to reveal himself. But while you're draining his health, Bowser's head will hover above the arena and spit icy crystals that freeze Luigi and diminish his health over time, so break free as soon as possible. The PAL version is even more difficult, with the bombs exploding at more frequent intervals, which can be a pain when you're holding them. And if he swallows you in that version, he has a tendency to breathe fire the moment he spits you out, causing additional damage that knocks out almost all your health. It's a really tough battle to the end that gives Luigi his moment to shine, but this boss just won't give up the ghost.
Nothing stands in my way. Kneel before your master.
Bloody Marie, Skullgirls. Dressed as a maid and wielding the power of the Skull Heart, Maria spent her life cleaning the Medici Mafia out of New Meridian. She waited in the catacombs for the travelers to arrive and challenge her position, but that won't be an easy fight to win. Marie, her name a reference to the infamous urban legend of Bloody Mary, put the skull in Skullgirl. Her first phase sees various skulls of size and species surround her and attack on command in random annoying volleys, or single powerful columns. Her skull vacuums may also give you a good whack should you get too close, and it's best to keep an eye on the ground unless you like being pulled 6 feet under by skeleton hands. She may seem like a pushover so far, but when she bursts into phase 2, your opinion will change. A shadowy figure now attacks separately from her, striking from any direction, and Marie will summon either a skeleton minion or gangster to attack the player with a melee or ranged move. The final phase transforms Marie into nothing but a skeleton barely tethered together by the skull heart at her very core. Now at her most vulnerable, she will throw everything she's got at you faster and harder than before. Marie will not rest until she is either defeated or most likely you are.
The Mothership, Earth Defense Force 2017, Inferno difficulty. The mother of all Ravager forces, the huge sphere descends upon Earth, ready to initiate the final attack to wipe out our last bastions of defense. Flying drones will be stationed around the ship at all times, and will always respond when depleted. Amidst the battle, the Mothership will deploy its genocide cannon that when fired, will obliterate everything under the sphere's body. Destroying this cannon reveals the weak spot, but its countermeasures will activate as a last line of protection for the wound. 300 heavily armed plates will surround the Mothership and begin firing down at the troops below, turning the battlefield into a marvelous, if not deadly, fireworks display. It's worth noting that the insane amount of projectiles the Mothership fires could cause a lot of seizures, hence why we included a warning at the start. Should you somehow aim true through the visual onslaught, you may be able to finally bring down the Mothership and end this invasion. But for how long?
Jinpachi, Tekken 5. Most well known for his absolutely fabulous hairdo, Jinpachi is the final boss of Tekken 5. Once an honorable man, his body has been overtaken by a malevolent spirit that controls his actions and leads him to an unwilling life of destruction. After breaking out of the Hanmaru prison compound, he orchestrates the tournament with the hope that perhaps a fighter will emerge who can save him from his torment. Jinpachi has a myriad of attacks in his arsenal, with all of them completely devastating and often long range. He can thrust his whole weight forward into the player character and take down most of their HP. He can use a punch that'll break through almost any blocking, and also has the capacity to eject fireballs and to shoot projectiles. This, in tandem with his capacity to teleport to and from using astral projection, makes for quite the battle. In the end, you may be able to lay him to rest, but if you happen to give up on the battle, Jinpachi will become saddened and his power only grows, and you will be left with the knowledge that you failed him. Along with being incredibly hard to beat, you don't unlock him after defeating the battle. With this being ground into the wound, perhaps it's best you take this one with a grain of salt, or perhaps a whole bucket. Alpha 152, Dead or Alive 4. An almost direct clone of Kasumi, Alpha 152 is a semi-transparent green-blue being who appears more than once in the Dead or Alive series, with her most famous and irritating part of being in the 4th installment of the series. Created to be a mega weapon, Alpha 152 knows only one thing, and that is how to fight with the intention to destroy. Alpha 152 is well regarded as being remarkably difficult to beat, as it can use a series of attacks that may leave players in the dust should their timing not be quite up to scratch, able to decimate HP with a single attack, as well as teleport around the stage at will. It carries all of Kasumi's abilities but with an edge. Alpha 152 will be able to use its secret weapon, the Burst Throw, which will be able to decimate the player's HP in a matter of seconds should they utilize a hold move. The most recommended route to take when fighting Alpha 152 is to simply practice over and over again till you finally manage to get the timing just right, as it can be a rather predictable boss once you memorize its patterns. In Dead or Alive 4, the kicker is that it's not an unlockable character either, so even though you manage to defeat the game, there's little else to show for your efforts in terms of the roster.
Brain, from Earth Defense Force 4.1, Shadow of New Despair, Inferno difficulty. It may not look much like a brain, but this large sky column controls all of the Ravager forces invading Earth. As such, the brain will be calling down the big guns to take care of the Earth Defense Force resistance on the ground. When it does so, Earth Eaters begin to obscure the sky and shoot energy blasts with massive weapons arrays down upon the surface. The brain also spawned various enemy types, including Deroys, Hectors, and flight vehicles. The brain is fought over 3 phases, and each step increases in difficulty with growing opposition standing between you and victory. The brain itself can only be damaged with long-range weaponry, and once it becomes desperate enough, it will even spawn an army of dragons to defend itself. For new players, expect some frame drops, immobilizing enemy fire, and the mission failed text, over and over again.
Ornstein and Smo, Dark Souls. 2 powerful knights guard the entrance of Norlando's cathedral. One is the captain of the 4 Knights of Gwen Lord of Cinder, Dragonslayer Ornstein, and the second is the despicable cannibal, Executioner Smo. You must face them together, and each have their own individual tactics and, depending on who you slay first, will absorb the other's abilities into their own. Ornstein uses his long Dragonslayer spear to deal quick slicing blows to his opponents at range, but can also follow up with a homing lightning bolt attack. Smo is quite nimble despite his size, and wields a gigantic-headed hammer to crush his victims' bones into easily digestible dust. As can be assumed, he has a lot of smashing and sweeping moves, but he can also do a devastating charge and butt slam attack that's sure to not only badly hurt, but add insult to injury. If either Ornstein or Smo are defeated, their counterpart will now fight you with an amalgam of both of their abilities, meaning even deadlier moves. It is widely agreed that Ornstein, supplemented by Smo's strength, is tougher to face than the opposite, but facing the worst of 2 evils will yield its greater reward.
Lingering Will, Kingdom Hearts 2.5 Remix. After entering the mysterious portal at the Disney Castle, Sora, Donald, and Goofy encounter the only living thing left in the Keyblade graveyard, or so they think. The Lingering Will is all that remains of Terra's mind, possessing his old armor that lies in wait to defeat Master Xehanort and reclaim his body. He battles Sora and friends with his powerful Keyblade, Ends of the Earth. Even as a mere shadow of its original wearer, the Lingering Will carries incredible strength and skill with its blade, swooping and slashing with mesmerizing speed, transforming the key into a glider to repeatedly ram Sora, shooting cannonballs of light, summoning drones to distract his enemies, and unleashing a flurry of berserk attacks. Any hit will deal considerable damage, so make sure you've upped all abilities, equipped your best weaponry, magic, and support items to give you the best chance of victory. Also, keep a close eye on that health gauge, or else this hidden boss will easily add another unmarked grave to the wasteland, especially if Donald doesn't follow through with his healing spells.
Crawmerax, Borderlands. First appearing in the mission You Will Die, Crawmerax the Invincible is an enormous crabworm that looks like a massive crustacean nightmare at first sight. Even with a fully equipped team of 4 with high-powered armor, guns, and kicks, this battle is widely considered one of the most difficult in the entirety of the series. With a moveset that includes flinging purple goop at the player, calling in smaller worms of assorted varieties, and a dive that results in the obliteration of shields, and huge chunks of health being decimated. The final attack, referred to as the Monstrous Dive, covers the entire battlefield and results in the team not only being affected in the aforementioned way, but also splits up the players so that it takes some time to regroup. It is almost impossible to defeat Crawmerax by yourself. However, it can be done, with some people citing a rather sneaky glitch point. In the end though, fighting the pesky crab is well worth it, as you will be rewarded with a plethora of loot and usually a nice big haul of cyan items.
No one is safe.
Onslaught, Marvel vs. Capcom, Clash of Superheroes. It took the entire Marvel superhero roster to defeat him in the comics, so facing Onslaught with only 2 fighters should be enough to fill every player with dread. Onslaught himself is fought through 2 forms, his first being his normal, albeit still huge size. He is quite agile, able to teleport and use a head crush attack to charge into his opponents. He can even pull foes towards him and into awaiting powerful attacks such as a magnetic shockwave or a hyper mind blast. Should you avoid his powerful attacks, it appears you have defeated Onslaught, that is, until he emerges in his second gargantuan form. As a massive robot, his original attacks are now bigger and more damaging. Now with 2 giant claws, he can sweep the stage clean and create a stream of continuous energy, or 5 bursts from the ground up. Needless to say, this phase is even stronger than his last. But the satisfaction of seeing his defeated human form unconscious on the ground after the fight is larger than Onslaught could ever be.
So this is Sulphur.
Sulphur, Phantom Brave. It has been 30 years since Sulphur was sealed away in his own dimension, but only after causing widespread devastation. Now he is returning, and all that stands in his way is young Marona and her phantoms. Facing this floating skeletal torso, spine, and hands is pretty daunting at first sight, but looking at its stats will really make you anxious. Sulphur's attacks are powerful, ranging from its fiery Terminate to the cold Omega Ice, as well as the gusty Omega Wind, all of which damage everyone in a wide radius. Sulphur will be invincible unless you destroy the crystals around the arena, generating its protective energy. Then you'll have to focus on using your confines wisely. Once all the phantom spawns are gone, it's game over for you and the whole dimension.
Veracitus the Invincible, from Borderlands 2, Sir Hammerlock's Big Game Hunt. Borderlands is a game created for when you want to feel like a badass hunting cool monsters and shooting the hell out of them. It's rare for there to be a situation where one cannot simply use a legendary gun and topple the most terrifying of creatures in a matter of minutes, so Veracitus the Invincible makes for quite the battle. An upscaled stalker assisted by Chief Nuguatu, who wants to keep the creepy beast all to himself, Veracitus is massive, and tragically impervious to a great many attacks. With the added bonus of a rather irritating shield given to him by the Chief if you don't shoot him first, he will unleash a series of attacks that will obliterate your health in a matter of seconds. He does, however, become more vulnerable to fire damage if you manage to get his shield down. Discussion around the boss battle has resulted in the discovery of the tactic of using the Trespasser to snipe the chief and then doing your utmost to complete the rest of the battle with the Norfleet as Veracitus becomes more enraged. Class may also be an issue here, as it can be far more difficult to defeat him as, say, a Siren or Assassin than as a Gunzerker. Fortunately, with big enemies come big rewards, and even though the battle may be difficult, the Iridium bars are well worth it, as is the mission completion.
The mark of my dignity shall scar thy DNA.
Gil, Street Fighter 3, Third Strike. A half-red, half-blue Dionysus, Gil is a muscular and imposing sight to behold. With his flowing blonde hair and enormous build, that is not to say that he is without his flaws. A terrifyingly manipulative cult leader with a projected benevolence, he is not to be underestimated when approached in battle. He has an incredible moveset with many abilities available to him, including control over ice and fire, and the capacity to attack without charging up the power. But he is perhaps most famous for the use of his super art. Widely referenced as one of the cheapest moves in the game, Gil is able to use Sephiric Wing in Third Strike. This allows him to grow a number of wings on his back and rise up, which results in light emanating from his body and a massive attack that cannot be blocked or avoided. This move will cause immense damage to your health bar.
I am your god.
And the only way to prevent being hit by it is to knock him out of his charge-up mode when he's about to use it. Unfortunately, this does not give much relief. Even if jolted out of his charge-up, he will retain his charge meter regardless. This can be a very dangerous move if Gil is given the chance to use it, so the best way to beat him is with merciless assaults that don't allow for any relief. The battle still feels notably irritating as a whole, leading to a lot of presses of that continue button.
Kneel before your master.
Awakened Alma, Ninja Gaiden. One of the 5 greater fiends of the Holy Vigorian Empire, Alma was once a dangerously effective hunter, inspired by her sister Rachel to quell the fiend menace that threatened their homeworld. However, this did not last for long, as one of the greater fiends, Doku, led her onto the path of becoming one of the 5. This was exacerbated by a blood disorder in both her and her sister that initiated a slow mutation into fiends. When Ryu first encounters Alma, she is already quite a difficult enemy to defeat. She will move around the stage, slinging fireballs and picking up the player in a tractor beam-like attack that pulls them toward her, then tosses them down towards the ground. Even though the player can defeat her, she soon returns, but in her awakened form. This version of Alma is a deep purple, and adopts the body of a scorpion worm in tandem with wings and a humanoid torso. She retains all her prior abilities, except she gains the ability to crush Ryu with her tail. This boss battle is teeth-grindingly hard, with both times you face off against her considered to be some of the most difficult in the series. Should you make it through her battle, she manages to redeem herself by making a last-ditch effort to save her sister, sacrificing herself to Doku's sword.
Gehrman, Bloodborne. The first hunter, now a prisoner within the hunter's dream, is now sworn to take your life to cast you out of this terrible place. Although aged and appearing frail, Gehrman is cunning and swift on the battlefield, still able to cut down even the most well-trained hunters. Armed with the original scythe, the burial blade, that can transform at will into whatever weapon form is required, Gehrman can clear half the graveyard with one sweep of it. Also equipped with the pistol and blunderbuss, he can stagger and knock down his opponents before unleashing a torrent of slashes down with the blade. Dodging and parrying are wise tactics against this skilled warrior, and keeping an eye out for openings and telegraphs will be your only hope of beating this boss. Watch out for the halfway mark, where he unleashes a burst of energy that will deal lots of damage to anyone within the blast radius, and be cautious to avoid it as best you can. Once the battle is won, you may find that by defeating the old hunter, you have given him exactly what he has always wanted.
Maneater, Demon Souls. Believed to be the result of abhorrent experimentation on Latria prisoners combined with an assortment of animal parts, the Maneater is a ghastly sight. A chimera of human, bat, and snake characteristics, the only pair in existence patrol a narrow walkway overlooking a chasm above the Fool's Idol Arkstone. The first will charge as soon as you cleared the fog, and after dealing the initial blow, it will take flight. Only the orange glow emanating from its eyes and mouth reveal where it's hovering in wait through the darkness. Aside from using its velocity mid-flight to deal damage, it uses its claws to pound the player into submission before retreating out of reach. Its serpent tail can spit projectiles from afar, as well as inject a power boost into the Maneater, allowing it to deal extra damage. Using tact in your approach may help you land the odd hit, but try to bite off more than you can chew, and the Maneater will unleash a sonic wave to knock you back. Just remember, you will have to face 2 of these things simultaneously, so take great care not to fall off the edge and maybe, just maybe, you'll make it across the bridge alive.
Sans, Undertale, Genocide Run. The Genocide Run in Undertale is already a slog and a half without adding on the trauma of having to battle Sans at the end of the game, but by showing no mercy, why should mercy be shown to you? As the final boss, Sans becomes the player's worst nightmare, and there's no doubt from the start that you're gonna have a bad time. Even with Undertale's unique combat style, which can be rather easy in some areas of the game, Sans becomes a feat to defeat. He will often slam the soul of Frisk into the walls and engage the player by throwing bones and platforms down to avoid and jump onto. His initial attack, which always goes first, results in a series of lines and bones being thrown at the player. In order to defeat him, the player will have to continue to press fight until eventually he offers you mercy. This is, of course, a fake out, wherein he will rain down attacks onto the player until they eventually die. He will also pull out the Gaster Blaster move that is well known as his heaviest attack. If you manage to survive his onslaught without accepting his offer for mercy, Sans will use his special attack, which mostly consists of hoping that Frisk will get bored and give up. He will fall asleep after a while, which results in the player having to make their way quietly over to the fight button again. Once pressed, Sans will awaken and you can finally obliterate him, if you manage to make it that far. He will bleed and limp off screen as he dies, leaving you with a sense of satisfaction. Or more realistically, a sense of extreme sadness and existential dread.
Akuma, Tekken 7. Found in the special chapter of Tekken 7, the boss battle with Akuma is predestined to be quite the slog. Unfortunately, beating him is required in order to achieve the Master of Iron Fist achievement, as well as 100% completion. If you intend on taking him on without learning how to play Devil Kaizuya by properly learning his moves, you're not going to succeed. If you try to take him down without thinking through your strategy, you're also not going to have a fun time. Forethought is completely necessary in order to defeat Akuma, especially as he has surprising agility as well as exceptional range. His fireball is especially deadly, as it can extend across the whole stage and catch you off guard. He also has an enormous health bar, so it'll take all your capabilities to knock off the health inch by inch. When the battle comes to a head, Akuma will no longer use long-range attacks, choosing instead to get close and personal. You will have to counter his rage art with yours, in order to ensure that you do not lose. But the battle comes down to the fact that you will be stuck learning your lesson over and over until you finally succeed. Paracelsia, Sugoi, Arcana Heart 2. This all-female fighter features a plethora of fierce opponents, but none more so than the expansion's final boss. Elsia has adopted Paracelsia, the Arcana of Life, and controls 4 multicolored elemental spheres representing water, earth, fire, and plant, able to use them to block damage or push back her opponent. The orbs individually can summon heavy shower columns, drop large boulders and statues from the sky, whip and summon fire around the arena, and toss large cutting leaves across the stage. Using their power all together, she can shroud the player in a bright explosion, carry them into the air to meet certain doom, create a protective barrier around herself, or simply knock the orbs against the player one at a time. Many of these special moves can see your life depleted in a single hit, made all the more unfair as she has 9 bars of energy, allowing her to continuously use those attacks. With how long it takes to deal every single blow, you discover there's a reason she's called the Millennium Keeper.
Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. The guy's name is in the title. How much clearer could it be? The original Dream match, Little Mac's first major title win, only came after his fight with real-life boxing legend Mike Tyson. With a record like Tyson's, his taunts such as telling you to stay down when you're knocked down or calling you a joke of a challenge certainly don't feel like pulled punches. His uppercuts are no joke, able to knock Little Mac out in a single strike. You can block them if you enjoy the sight of your health bar depleting almost entirely in one hit. It'll be nothing but a flurry of these from Tyson for a good minute and a half of the match. Telegraphed by a split-second blink, afterward he opts to spice things up with jabbing punches, but these still do a lot of damage and are also very quick. After a lot of expertly timed dodges, you may finally bring the champ to the ground, earning a mark of respect from many gamers still trying to win this match to this day. To sum up how difficult this boss is, even the real Mike Tyson couldn't take down his digital counterpart.
Guitar Hero 3 Expert Difficulty. Whenever a guy who is literally Satan appears at your band's gig, it's generally never good news. As you progress through the game, you come to realize that perhaps singing your souls away to him, even if it was accidental, perhaps wasn't a good idea. In order to defeat him and free yourselves from his satanic contract, you're going to need an awful lot of skill, or in the absence of that, a whole lot of strategy play. In order to defeat him, you will need to play a speed metal version of The Devil Went Down to Georgia. Some suggest the best way to beat him is to utilize power-ups as much as possible, specifically the whammy, restarting the level over and over again until you eventually get this particular one. You're also given a shot at Victory Solo, which, if you successfully hit the notes, will allow you to beat him soundly. While he is somewhat easier to defeat on lower difficulties, once you attempt him on Expert, there is no end to the amount of times you will have to try and try again. However, on every difficulty when you defeat him, you will get a guitar, with the reward for Expert being the ability to purchase the Distant Visitor guitar. Beating him on any difficulty will also unlock the song Through the Fire and the Flames, which is a challenging song in its own right. The one solid tip we can give you to beat him, be the best that's ever been.
Lich King, World of Warcraft. The Lich King is one of the most iconic and well-known enemies in the entire World of Warcraft series, and it's easy to see why. The ruler of the Scourge, he governs and commands them from his frozen throne, using only telepathic signals to get them to carry out his bidding. Found originally in the Ice-Crown Citadel, and before patches made him just that little bit easier to beat, Lich King could be a struggle even if you enlisted all your mates, and your mates' mates, and their mates' mates' to come and take him down with you. The build up to his battle proves to be a long and arduous road, with many enemies emerging from the woodwork to hamper your efforts to defeat their long-standing leader. With 4 battle phases, and some of these consisting of half phases, you will be in for quite the fight, and he will warn you that the battle will result in you begging for mercy, and him denying it. The first phase consists of the Lich King summoning assists and casting Remorseless Winter and Infest to cause as much damage as he possibly can. This then feeds into him casting Pain and Suffering and raising Restless Spirits in order to wear the heroes down. Should you reach the second phase, things start to get really nasty as Valkyrs swoop down and carry off members of your party, and the Lich King starts to cast Defile, a devastating attack that causes enormous damage, especially if your party happens to be cloistered together. Phase 3 sees more of Remorseless Winter, in tandem with the use of Vile Spirits, another summon, and Soul Reaper, another damage-based attack. Finally, Phase 4 sees the Lich King cast Fury of Frostmourne, which kills every member of the raid party. However, you are saved but for the grace of Tyrannus Menethil II, who will resurrect every party member if they wish, and allow them to destroy what little is left of the Lich King. For players who faced the Lich King back in the day, defeating him was the ultimate sense of pride and accomplishment, and brought enormous amounts of bragging rights. Elizabeth, Persona 3. Elizabeth is an absolute sweetheart, with her cute little bob haircut and knee-high boots. But underneath her porter's hat lurks a dark secret. That secret, if you enter into New Game Plus after sparing Ryoji Mochizuki, will be revealed in a rather startling boss battle. Elizabeth is searching for the truth to her existence, hoping she will discover it if you prove you can defeat her. You can find her on the 10th floor of Monad, ready for battle. However, if you choose to take her on, you will have to be well prepared. You're going to face her without the rest of your team, except for Fuka, so every persona you choose has to be carefully selected in advance. Elizabeth will impose strict rules on the battle, and if you break them, she will smack you with a Mega Delayan attack, obliterating you with a move that deals 9,999 damage. The attack is completely impossible to survive, leaving you to play nice. She can also switch personas mid-battle, which makes her even more challenging. In the end, this fight is largely trial and error. Eventually you may get lucky and defeat her, but it takes practice. When you finally succeed, you will be given the reward of knowing you helped Elizabeth uncover her own solution to her questions, as well as a platinum bookmark. Whether or not this is a good enough gift for the hours of torture, you decide.
Emerald Weapon from Final Fantasy VII. One of the super bosses in Final Fantasy VII, the Emerald Weapon can be found at the bottom of the sea and can only be accessed in the submarine. A hulking green structure built like a suit of armor, this boss has a myriad of attacks in its arsenal, and a health bar that goes up to 1 million HP. The Emerald Weapon will unleash an assault on your party that seems relentless. Attacks will appear in a patterned barrage, consisting of an emerald shoot that will eviscerate a single party member, Emerald Beam, which will take up 63% of every party member's HP, and Revenge Stamp, a counter that hits the party with enormous amounts of damage. To make matters worse, this boss will also cancel many status effects, leaving you to base the whole battle on sheer unadulterated skill. The Emerald Weapon also has the capacity to use a devastating attack called Airtam Storm, an attack that will dole out as much damage as the player has materia equipped. In order to build up your defenses as much as possible, it is advisable to get the Golden Chocobo to gather enormous amounts of materia. While this boss battle is hard, it's not impossible. However, after defeating the Emerald Weapon and its counterpart, the Ruby Weapon, it's nice to breathe a sigh of relief and look at your well-earned trophies.
Did you enjoy the video? Why not click the bell icon and subscribe to see more content from us at Tadstock Videos. And now let's see the creators of this video.